So I'm going to talk a bit about the finale. I'm also going to try to talk about the rest of the season because I'm much more positive on the rest of the season than the finale and the second to last episode. Now, episode 12, 13, I couldn't have been more impressed with the show. There were 3 or 4 different storylines I really was interested in. They were unpredictable. I didn't know which direction the show was going to take them. And then 15 minutes, you blink your eyes, and all of a sudden I'm watching a show where I don't care about a single storyline or a single character. And it was shocking just how much my interest in this show just nosedived so quickly. So I had a lot of problems with the finale, but my biggest one was how they wrapped up the war with the Klingons. It made no sense for them to give the detonator to L'Rell rather than just keep it for themselves. Like, why would they not do the same thing L'Rell did, which is basically use the detonator to blackmail the other Klingons into being more peaceful and ending the war? Not to mention the fact that L'Rell could basically just control this entire Klingon empire with a single detonator. No one would just shoot her in the back when she wasn't looking. That made no sense, but fine. But why would you trust L'Rell, who's a pretty horrible character? She's done awful things. She's shown some signs of humanity and warmth, but fundamentally she's still an awful, awful character. Why you would trust her with this detonator rather than just keeping it yourself and using it to blackmail the Klingon army? It didn't make any sense whatsoever. I guess it's not that much more ridiculous than their first plan, which was to trust the whole operation with Philippa, who, by the way, that last scene with her and Michael, where she looks and says, "Be good," and there's this little look between them. Have we forgotten that Philippa was the head of the Terran Empire, which they hyped it up as this horrible, fascist, oppressive, racist empire with agonizer boosts and basically the nightmare empire, and she was the head of it. And she's just a horrible human being. I mean, she's calling people slaves still, and we're supposed to just now have this respect for her, like, oh, she's this lovable rascal. And if they made it seem like Philippa, she was born into being the head of this organization, and look, it was her upbringing that led her to have these awful beliefs, then maybe, but we didn't flesh any of that out. She was just horrible for no reason, and so why she would be a character that we kind of root for and have this respect for, I didn't understand it. I really wanted to see her get her comeuppance, and nothing about the finale made sense. Now Philippa, she's setting up this bomb. Michael knows this, and rather than immediately going to stop Philippa and then implementing this plan she has to use L'Rell to defeat the Klingons, she goes and has this conversation with the Admiral. She doesn't know how long it's going to take Philippa to set up this bomb. It would make no sense that she would just waste precious time having this diplomatic talk with the Admiral. She's already shown she's willing to mutiny and do whatever it takes. She would just do that again. She wouldn't obey chain of command this time at the expense of potentially risking all these Klingon lives that she cares so much about. And if you want to break down what this finale consisted of, there was a bunch of filler, nonsense, foolishness, jokes, which not all of it was bad, but it had no place in the finale. Then there was this big reveal, the solution to the crisis that was so bad and so silly for the reasons I've talked about. And then there's horrible, corny monologues at the end, and God, it was a bad finale. Now, when they had Tyler acting like a Klingon and speaking Klingon, I actually thought that was quite cool, and it gave you a taste of what could have been really awesome. Their whole attempt to kind of humanize the Klingons and show the different characters and the differences between them, I really thought it was an interesting idea. It was part of what got me excited for the show, but it was a total failure. In the first episode, we have Takuvma, and he's given his speech about how the Federation, they're all about everyone being the same and everyone cooperating until we're all just this undifferentiated mass, and he's all about individuality and culture and their traditions, and we have to preserve our way of life. And I thought that it could have been fascinating if they could have contrasted that with Cole, the more aggressive Klingon, and the Klingon species reassignment surgery, and kind of show how there's these different factions. One is supremacy and wanting Klingon to be the superior way of life and everyone to adopt it, and then the other who know they're opposed to the Federation, but they just want to keep their individuality. And you could have seen some genuine diversity in Klingon beliefs and kind of the different mentalities, but we didn't get that. We just saw the Klingons are all pretty awful, except the ordinary Klingons. They're just, people, and they should be respected like anyone else. But all the Klingon leadership, they're all awful, except L'Rell, who she's mostly awful and does horrible things, but she kind of has a change of heart and all of a sudden is really nice at the end. Now, Michael, I have mixed feelings. At some points, I really liked her. When she was a criminal and she was at the bottom, that was when I liked her the most. She had this great scene in the cafeteria where she had a really good fight scene. And then I really liked her when she was trying to prove herself, when she was new on the team. I thought that was great. And her fight scenes, some of them were really good. I really liked her one with her and Saru fighting. Some were really disappointing. When she fought Cole, that was incredibly disappointing and anticlimactic. So again, with her, I feel like it really was a mixed bag. Now, Tilly, I actually thought was great. I thought she was very funny. We first see her as this over-enthusiastic friend. Then we see her as the party girl. Then we see her trying to play fascist. And I thought showed some good diversity in acting and was pretty funny in most of her roles. Now, this brings us to the Mirror Universe part of the show, which I really liked it. I did feel like sometimes rather than exploring some of the cool philosophical or scientific aspects of parallel universes, they instead just went for maximum shock value. So to have Philippa in one universe be so sweet and so empathetic and pacifistic, and in the other universe, she's absolutely cold-blooded and ruthless and murders 5 people without blinking an eye, it's kind of fun and it's wacky, but it doesn't make any kind of logical sense. If she has the same DNA, the same fundamental essence, why is she completely different in these different realities? They don't really explain that at all. It'd be cool if they explained how maybe there was a different upbringing or some kind of traumatic event that kind of made the change, but they don't explain it, and you're left to believe that the only explanation is that she's completely just a sponge and she sucks up the values of the people around her, and when she's part of the Federation, she just completely sucks up their philosophy of peace and tolerance, and when she's part of the Empire, she just completely sucks up their philosophy. But that's an absurd explanation. It's the best I can come up with. And I guess it depends on what your interpretation of these parallel universes are. Now, you could say, look, one of them is a dark universe, one of them is a light universe. So in this dark universe, everyone's aggressiveness is just turned up, and everyone is to some extent worse in the mirror universe. Or you can say it's a flip, it's a mirror universe. So everyone who's really good in one universe, they're really evil in the other, and vice versa. And I think you do have to have one of these two interpretations rather than just say you have the multiverse theory and all these universes are just constantly branching off and it's just random, because there's so many coincidences that just don't make sense. So if the universes are so different in some ways, like they talk about the sensitivity to light, and there's this branch point so far back that these universes are so different, and yet they're so similar, and all these characters from one universe just happen to bump into the versions from the other, that only makes sense if there's some kind of idea of destiny and fate and some kind of way these universes are fundamentally linked, rather than just two universes that happen to jump to these two universes out of all the countless universes. There's something special about the relationship between these two universes. You have to admit that. But again, I just feel it was somewhat of a missed opportunity. They could have done something really cool, where in one universe, someone is a resistance fighter leader and gives these great speeches about freedom and equality and seems like such an ideologue. In the other universe, they're the head of the empire. And you see that for all their talk about ideals, really deep down their essence, they just wanted power. And depending on which universe they ended up in, depending on their life circumstances, they were going to either be a resistance fighter or a dictator. It just depended on their circumstances, however they were going to be able to have the most power. Now, one thing I really did like was when Lorca, he's talking about how it's his destiny and how nothing is by accident. Now, what I liked was if you actually went to another universe and somehow managed to find your way to make your way back to your original universe, you really would feel like to some extent things aren't random, it's not an accident, you are destined to do great things. And just quickly, my own interpretation of how the universes work is that there's an almost near infinite number of different universes, almost every combination you can think of, but each universe also has this kind of shadow universe where one fundamental thing is different, and that's how you get people and things that are so similar but can be also so different, because there's one fundamental nature of reality itself that is different in the different universes. And I think it makes more sense if you can only travel in between these two shadow universes rather than the idea that they could hypothetically travel to any of these infinite universes on the multiverse, because it's just too many universes. The odds of you ending up in a universe where things are so similar are so small when you consider the number of infinite universes, unless you say, look, the universes that are more similar, in some sense, they're closer to each other. And it's like the analogy of like closer in physical space. Obviously, it's not, because we're talking about different universes. But in some sense, if you map these universes out in similarity, universes that were closer, in some sense more similar to each other, would be easier to reach. Now, other parts of the show I found a bit disappointing. We didn't get that many cool alien species or different kinds of creatures. The tardigrade was really cool, which, by the way, is a real animal. You can look it up, which I think is fascinating that really exists. It's one of those examples of truth being stranger than fiction. Sometimes the world we live in, is just astounding how many cool things there are in it. And then the Gormagander, that was cool as well, but all in all, 14 episodes, 15 episodes, kind of a lack of cool, interesting creatures or planets. And then the science was just awful. Now, this is totally different. I don't mind when you play fast and loose with science to enable you to do really cool things in the show. If the fiddling around with the science is enhancing the show, that's fine. But this was different. They would just get science wrong for no reason at all. Like when they say at the quantum level, there's no difference between biology and physics. That doesn't make any sense, because at no level is there any difference between biology and physics. Biology and physics are just two different ways we organize science. They're just two different fields of inquiry. It's not like the physical laws of reality are different in biology and physics at the macro level, but then at the micro level, they're the same. So again, this added nothing to the show. It was just something they just said because I guess it sounded cool, but it just made no sense. And then just the logical inconsistencies in the time loop, like characters not remembering past time loops, and then all of a sudden they would start to remember certain things from past time loops for no reason. Or the time loop would be the same, and then the time loop would be different. They wouldn't get paged on the intercom on like the 6th iteration for no reason. I will say Harry Mudd was great, though. I was very surprised. I thought he gave a very underrated performance. And then the idea that when they travel in a ship from one parallel universe to the other, the ships get switched. This doesn't make any sense. Why would the ships just get switched? So one ship in one universe, they happen to decide to do this thing to travel to the other. But it's not like these two ships, again, unless these ships have some kind of cosmic bond, why would a ship from one universe, which is just minding its own business in a completely different location, happen to suddenly get transported to the other location? It just doesn't make any sense, because if you talk about opening up a wormhole in space, that's between 2 points in space. That's not between two ships, wherever these two ships happen to be. Okay, so the video is getting long. I'm going to end it there. Overall thoughts on the season, it wasn't terrible. There was a lot of good there. And at some points, I really enjoyed it, and I was really excited, and I really had faith in the direction they were going to take it. But that last 2 episodes just killed it for me. And honestly, I'm at the point where next season coming out, I will watch the first couple episodes for sure. But if I'm getting the vibe that it's going to be like the last 2 episodes of the season, I honestly won't watch it. And I know, obviously, the show will say, good riddance, that's fine, you're not our target audience. Obviously, I'll show a picture. And yeah, so that's kind of my take on the show. There's a lot of goodness there. Really fell apart in the last couple of episodes, and I don't know if that means the show in general is just kind of toxic, or it was just a bad last couple episodes. I guess remains to be seen.